Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and you're listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Welcome back to another episode of Nos Audietis on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. We are back with Matt Doyle, and we're going to do another episode of How the West Will Be Won. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm recovering a little bit from the Gold Cup, having emotions about the U.S. national team again. It's not
How
something I
was that?
expected to have. It kind of came out of nowhere because I was
I
ready to write
agree.
the whole thing off, but then um, they played with some heart. They played with I thought they played with some real toughness, and I certainly have my quibbles about some of the squad selection and Mauricio Pochettino waiting too long to use his subs every single time, and some of the guys maybe disappeared in the fight, but like they fought and they gave as good as they got physically, and we haven't seen that since about 16 months, right? I think the last time we saw that was the 2024 Nations League final against Mexico. That was like the last time any of the A team guys actually showed up. And I mean that both literally and metaphorically. So these guys kind of won me over in a real way, even though a lot of them, leave something to be desired as soccer players. So
That's an interesting. I hadn't necessarily planned on talking about this, but this is actually a good transition into talking about some subjects that are near and dear to our hearts. You see how they played, and you can really see how a Christian Roldan might fit in really nicely with this group. I think he's been, for me, one of the best number sixes in the league this year. But he's also shown himself to be like, he just played in the Club World Cup at
yeah,
he's not going to play anyone better than that when he goes through, when he plays for the national team. Is there any reason, like, is it realistic to think that he might actually be able to get back into this team in time for next summer?
if it's not realistic, then Pochettino's not doing his job.
Okay.
Because if you play as well as Christian Roldan has played over the past year, and then bring that with you to games against Botafogo and Atletico Madrid and um, PSG, if you're out there bodying Rodrigo De Paul and best player on the field against the Copa Libertadores champions, and you know holding your own, more than holding your own, really, against that midfield that PSG have. Yeah, you're good enough to play in the Gold Cup, and I hope that Pochettino is like the books aren't closed, right? And I would understand a little bit if they were, because it's less than a year left now until the World
Right.
Cup itself, and he's developed trust to a degree, and kind of partnerships and all that, and it's not really the time to work some guys in, but at the same time, there are some glaring needs. And the guys who are supposed to be doing the job, like, look, man, Johnny Cardozo, we all know he's going to move for $30 million or whatever it is to Atleti. He has not had one good game for the U.S. national team. He's not had one. And
And he didn't have one in this Gold Cup, even if he was carrying an ankle injury or whatever they said that
he
he was
he
carrying.
played 11 minutes in the Gold Cup. He was terrible against Switzerland. Everybody was terrible against Switzerland, but he was terrible against Switzerland in the buildup. I thought he was better in 45 minutes against Turkey, but certainly he was nowhere near as good in those games as Roldan was in games that meant something. And the stuff that Roldan does is the stuff that Tyler Adams does in terms of reading the play early and then using his extreme quickness to close down opposing buildups. And even when he's not winning the ball, he's turning opposing sequences into less valuable directions. And that gives his team a chance to recover into their defensive shape. And 99% of teams around, more than 100% of teams around the world are better defensively when they're in their defensive shape. And it's just like such a non-negotiable. And he does that for the Sounders, and he did that repeatedly at this level. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I don't know if I expressed myself poorly there, but like I thought Jackson Reagan was really good at the Club World Cup. I'm just saying I didn't think he was as good as
It's
Christian
Christian
Roldan
Roldan,
was,
who
who
might have
was like
been, yeah,
literally the man of the match against the
sure.
Copa Libertadores
I was saying that
champions.
Christian, if there was a CONCACAF player of the tournament, I thought Christian would have been in the mix for that.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I didn't watch the Monterey games as closely as I guess I should have because I'm sure that there's somebody there. But
Right.
like, yeah, he he was excellent, and you kind of touched on it um, with Jackson Reagan. Like his distribution is so important to Seattle's build out. It tilts the field, but then
Hmm.
Roldan does that as well. And I was watching, USA Mexico last night, seeing how much we struggled with that. I mean, particularly Tyler Adams. First of all, I thought he was poor, his recognition in terms of finding the right spots to be available for the center backs, and then his inability to play on the half turn. Mexico weaponized it against the US. First hour or so, um, go back, watch that game, count the turnovers from Tyler Adams, who I love, who has been a big game player for the US in the past. And to be fair to him, he's been carrying a knock, but he was not an asset in that game. He was a vulnerability that didn't end up costing us the game, but it was a scab for Mexico to pick at. And when I think of that in conjunction with what Don did against those three teams, it's like I I know which one I want to see starting the next friendly, and it's not the guy who plays in Europe.
Yeah, there was an interesting little bit that Andrew Wiebe added to the broadcast last night where he was saying how he talked to Christian Roldan, and Roldan had said he does, he's satisfied with where his career is and how it's gone. Here he is, it looks like he's going to be a one club man, which is, kind of unheard of in this day and age in professional soccer. And so he's satisfied, but at the same time, he's 30 years old. He still has aspirations of seeing how far he can take his career, and there is sort of this alternate reality of, man, maybe if he had played in this position for a longer period of time, maybe he would already be sort of at a different level. And what's the irony there is that part of why he was in the last World Cup roster is because Berhalter really liked him as a wide player for whatever reason, and the Sounders and Brian Schmetzer also really liked him as a wide player.
I mean, he was
And
the
yet,
best player. He was the best player in the 2022 CONCACAF Champions League,
yeah,
playing
exactly.
as a winger.
I know, and that's sort of the irony of all this is that here he is. He made the World Cup as a winger, so it's like it's hard to be too critical of it, but yet you also look at him play now, and you're like, God, if he had a couple more years playing this position, maybe it would have been a little bit different. But still, he, it would be interesting to see if he can get, because I would have thought in 2022, if you had told me that he was going to be even in contention for the next World Cup, I would have thought that was crazy. And here he is, sitting here, maybe being able to sneak in there at the line.
If you had told me that, I would have said, "Oh, we've gone to a 4-3-3 with a pressing 10." The old
Right.
Latif
Sure.
Blessing role
Right. Yeah.
from LAFC. That's what I would have thought would have been his role. I don't, he played a lot. You know this. He played a lot in central midfield for the Sounders back in the day.
Yes.
In the last few years of the previous decade, and he was good, but it was a different type of good. It was a
Totally
busy
different. He
good,
always
you
had
know.
Gustav Svensson or Ozzy Alonso next to him. He was never the six. He was always
Yeah,
the the floating eight kind of role. He was not being tasked with what he is doing now, where he's sort of shielding the back line, and he's being a
orchestrating,
guy.
like
Right.
his ability
Orchestrating,
to get
exactly.
on the ball and to make the kind of defense splitting passes that he makes now regularly. He also he does the thing that all like super elite players do. He moves defenders around with his eyes, and you can see it now. Like if you watch Christian Roldan pass the ball, you could set your watch by the nearest defender taking a step in the wrong direction right before he passes the ball. It's like, this is the Sergio Busquets thing, right? And nobody used to talk
Yeah.
about this, 15, 18 years ago, but then Busquets came on the scene and everybody realized it's like, oh, he's manipulating 6 different defenders just by looking in a different direction from where he's about to pass the ball. I don't remember Christian Roldan having that 6 years ago. I don't remember him
Yeah,
having
I
that
don't either.
3
I
years
don't.
ago. But
He
he's
was
clearly
definitely more
doing
of
it now.
a. Yeah, he's always sort of been known more for his engine and his willingness to cover a lot of
Functionality.
ground, and
Yeah.
right, exactly. Not so much his outthinking the opponent and sort of the way he's been playing now. And it's been fascinating to watch. I love watching it. I think he's been really good. The other player who, and I think he was good against the Crew too. I think it's worth saying, like, he, they have a pretty good midfield, and I thought at times he was, I mean, he's just so reliable. I think that's what it is that almost no matter who he goes up against, you know what you're going to get from Cristian Roldan right now. I think he's probably the Sounders' most reliable player.